moderator, now the lights are on. My name is Joe. I go on the internet by Cinemajoe, but just call me Joe, please. Today we have some very special guests from the movie Hokum. We have director Damian McCarthy and then star Adam Scott. We ask some questions about the movie. So Adam Scott and Damian McCarthy. All right.
Thank you for coming, everybody.
So, for a movie like Hokum, I think there's only one place to really start. We have to start with Damian. The inception of Hokum. The idea, the image, was there something stuck in your brain that evolved into a story? Can you tell us about it?
I think it was very much just wanting to have a crack at the haunted hotel subgenre. And it was also that idea of following a man that's just trying to make it through the night, like kind of like Evil Dead 2, that type of, I just got to survive till dawn. Whereas my previous film, it felt like it was more of an ensemble, and I also had somewhere to go. It's kind of an non-linear structure to Alfie. Whereas I just felt with this, that's like, okay, it's one guy, let's just really see if we can punish him. As he continues in the morning. So that was, those two things really were where it all started.
Adam, you are not unfamiliar with the horror subgenre. You dabbled in horror comedy, and you kind of done every genre in between. Your first movie ever, '96, Hellraiser Bloodlines, is that correct?
That's right. Sounded like there was a question mark on the end.
This is kind of your first step back into maybe a more proper horror movie.
Yeah, for sure.
What drew you back into this world?
Well, Damian McCarthy, first and foremost. I love Oddity so much. The script and the character as well. It was kind of the combination of those three things. I was really interested in the character and kind of the arc of the character, kind of starting with this unpleasant asshole and sort of, investigating, kind of slowly but surely finding out why he is that way and what it was that sort of set him on this path, and then kind of, it's not as much redemption as it is him kind of coming to accept the world as it is. I just thought it was an interesting structure for a character, but also really scary. The script was frightening as well, and also having seen Damian's work, I knew he would do something super interesting with it.
Damian, when you were looking to cast a character like Owen and Hokum, what kind of qualities were you looking at the actor, and how did Adam embody those characteristics in a way that surprised you?
I mean, I do think it was a tough part because there's such long stretches where there's no dialogue, there's no screen partner. It's just, it has to be somebody that could convey so much just with their physicality. I do keep the camera quite close to the actors as well, so for close-ups and stuff. So there's like that was quite important. Somebody that wouldn't shy away from the fact that the character is not all that likable to begin with. It's kind of the reverse of a horror movie in some ways, because usually it's at the start of the movie, your protagonist can start off quite timid and gentle, and then they toughen up over the series of events that happen. So at the end of the horror movie, now they're covered in blood and dirt, and they're all strong. And this is kind of the reverse of that. This is the guy starts off very, tough and distant and all those things. By the end of the film, he's somewhat softened. And Adam, when we spoke day one, there was never any kind of like an ego there to say, well, he needs to be more likable and heroic right from the start. It was like, no, this guy's a little bit of a prick, let's go with that, which I was delighted with, and it was like completely got it. And then all the things I'm saying about that actor who that I hoped to work with had Adam's qualities, like just being so expressive and the physicality of the scares. All that stuff is not easy to do. Like seeing the film, like that's something else I was hoping for.
Because this movie, so much of the terror stems from the atmosphere. And as an actor, what do you focus on to ensure the tension feels real for all of us watching?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, I'll say first of all that the room we shot in for the honeymoon suite really was frightening and creepy. And we were in there, we were shooting for a while, and then at a certain point, Damian turned to me and he's like, well, it's just you now for, 3 weeks or whatever the rest of the shoot was. And it was just us in that one room. And it was really fun. It was really challenging because I really depend on other actors to, it's like playing tennis by yourself or something. But the room and the hotel itself was, had to stand in for being another character to play the scenes with, and it was actually less challenging because the room itself had so many nooks and crannies. Like, we were there for a few weeks, and I kept finding weird little details that Damian and the production designer had put in, a really scary, weird. It felt like we were on a stage. It was not a real room, but it felt like a real place that had real history to it.
David, you're so good at tension, and we've seen that in Caveat, Oddity. Was there anything that you took from those two movies, anything you learned from those two movies that you applied when making Hokum?
Yeah, I think every film you make, you do respond to watching the film with the audience to see how they react to things, and you try to build on that. I think for this, it's very much about knowing that people are watching horror films. They know they know you're trying to catch them out. They know that something's coming, and it's very much just about trying to say, well, if I was watching horror film, this is where I guess what happened. It's trying to be a second early, a second late. Sometimes it's frames. It's just experience and just applying what I've learned and bringing it into this.
What is it about spooky houses you like so much? I mean, this is a hotel, a house of some form. This is almost your third movie about a spooky house in a way. What keeps drawing you back from like a storyteller to a spooky house?
It's just the history. It's just when you look at these places, they feel like a lot has happened in this room. I mean, if people think of any old, strange house or apartment or a hotel you've stayed in, you go like, oh yeah, it's like that vibe. There's like something's happened here, and maybe you don't know what it is, but that feeling is there. I think that's something I'm always chasing in my films through production design or art direction. If it's a relocation or filming, and it's like, yeah, you should get a sense that there's another story has happened here before the one that we're seeing. And I do think that Till, our production designer, and all the art team, feels like it has history.
I remember the first time, first time I saw Oddity, one of the things I was really fascinated by, one of the things that made me want to work with Damian so badly was how he was scaring me by just setting the camera up in front of inanimate objects and staying on them and creating tension with nothing, just by purely not looking away. And not only the figure in Oddity, but also the big room in the house, and just staying on an empty room. Same thing with the honeymoon suite here. When you're just looking at an empty room, you don't know if something's coming or not, and just the kind of looking at the space and allowing there to be space is super interesting and scary.
I'm curious, when you read the script, was there ever a scene that felt completely different from reading it on script on a page than being on set and performing it and eventually on screen?
Yeah, the early on when I'm walking through the honeymoon suite and suddenly my mom is right behind me. Do you remember that part?
Mm-hmm.
That I didn't quite get what was going to be frightening about that while we were doing. I just wanted to get the steps right because it required precision with exactly where we were walking. But the first time I saw that, it scared the bejesus out of me because I was doing ADR. So Damian was like, "Okay, I just want to hear like breathing sounds while you're walking," and the thing happened, and I yelped out loud because it scared the shit out of me. That's just a masterful jump scare that is just so fun.
And Damian, I mean, things change from script to screen. Is there anything that you found more challenging to adapt from the page?
No, what I will say is, I guess, if there was any surprises for me, it's just in what your actors want to do with the script. I mean, I think if you write something, you can kind of go maybe 40-50% with it. You can do so much of it. You have no idea how the lines are going to sound, or physically how actors are going to move, or what's going to happen. So for me, I mean, everything else you can plan out. You can plan out your production design, every single prop, and your camera, and your lighting. But then as the actors, okay, I'm excited to see what they're going to bring to it. And you go, oh yeah, that's, it feels different. It feels like it's all under your story, but it's, you've got people in front of you bringing it to life. That's really exciting.
I had read in a recent interview you did that you were intentionally trying not to echo The Shining in so many ways. They share similar shades of horror, from the hotel to a journalist and writer. Is that a conscious decision when you're making it? Like, don't be The Shining, don't be The Shining, don't be The Shining. How do you tackle it as a filmmaker for a movie that's so influential?
I guess you look at any Stephen King has touched on everything. It's like creepy dolls to haunted cars, to, everything. Telekinetic teenagers. So it's like if you didn't. So he's done the ultimate haunted hotel story. It's The Shining. So to just love that movie and the book. It's just okay. But it's just if they did it one way, we try to do it another way. So, for example, in The Shining, you have that scene where the car is driving, which I think is the car is driving towards the hotel, and they have the spaghetti score. It's very ominous, super spooky. So right off the bat, it's like, okay, we're into horror. So it's like, I'd love to do something like that as we're driving over the Irish hills. It's called like Antas. We gotta have something that's quite sweet and pretty and again, it gives me somewhere to go then with the score. We can start off quite light and then get darker as we go on. So every time, Shining would do something like that, we kind of go, well, Shining, we got to do the opposite. But again, I think everybody writing something that's in any, that genre is very much in Stephen King's shadow, because he's just this incredible imagination. He's just done, he's done it all.
As an actor, were you thinking of Jack Torrance at all when performing home?
I wasn't. I mean, we did talk about The Shining because how could you not? But Damian and I, whenever we had a moment on set, we would talk about any number of movies. But The Shining, you're making a horror film. The Shining always moves large, just like The Thing and Halloween and any of these kind of perfect horror films over the years.
Hokum it's a scary movie, but it has like this twisted sense of humor to it. There is like this dry humor that Hokum has. How do you balance the humor with the horror?
I don't know if it ever intentionally tries to be funny to just like a turn of phrase or the way a line is delivered. It would just be my way of signaling to the audience you can enjoy it. It's not taken so super seriously and it's still scary and everybody's obviously taking it very seriously in the way we made it, but it's just, there is a little bit of a lighter touch to it. For me, I would try to put that in, one, because you can kind of catch people out, this is quite funny, and then, something scary happens. But also just to make it more rewatchable. You come back to it. By the time that film finished, I was entertained. There was a couple of laughs in it. There's a better chance of you coming back to rewatch it. Whereas that's the ultimate goal, is to make something that people want to see again. I just think some horror films that I've watched, you get to see it, you're like, that's amazing, it's so good. It's so heavy, I'm never going to watch it again. Try to do the opposite.
Adam, you have historically played characters who are in between chaos and control, whether that be in TV or film. Did you find slipping into the character role easier because of that experience?
That's interesting. I felt that this character was someone who felt like they had complete control and felt like he had complete control over everyone he came in contact with, like Peter at the front desk and the kind of old man talking to the kids, and kind of felt like whenever he entered a room, he was going to set the rules, and everyone was going to, proceed according to him, and didn't want people to know who he was, but needed people to know who he was. So just in case there was any mistaking, you need to listen to what I say. Anyway, he felt like he was in complete control, and then slowly over the course of the film realizes he needs to kind of loosen his grip on the bat a little bit because there's nothing you can do, and kind of seeking that control is what got him into all of the trouble and misery that he's in the first place.
Jump scares are usually really hard to pull off for an audience to really believe in it. What are the qualities that make a good jump scare? Because the audience members, like you said earlier, they're smart. People can get ready for them. They can predict them. But you are still so good at getting all of us caught off guard. You caught Adam off guard just doing ADR.
Yeah.
What makes a good jump scare? If you were to teach someone who is trying to be a horror director, what would you need someone very advice to them?
I think it's just all in the build-up. It's just like whatever image you finally land on, that gets that scare. It's definitely all that build-up, to kind of let people know it's coming. There's something coming at some stage, but it's just a matter of when. I think as well, like you look at this film, for example, when Adam's character's coming through the woods and meets David Wilmot as Jerry, he's kind of revealed behind the tree. It scares Adam. A bad jump scare there would have been to put in some kind of a sting or some kind of a loud noise over Jerry just sitting there. I mean, Jerry's not a threat. It's more of a scare for the character. I think it's just to make sure that you have those, to pay attention to those when they feel right for when the threat is real and when it's not. It's just something that suits the character.
Perfect. Well, I only have time for one more question. I love ending these moderating Q&As, asking people their favorite horror movies. So since we're watching Hokum, Dave, do you have a favorite horror movie?
It's probably John Carpenter's The Thing. I've seen it 1,000 times. Just put it on now in the background for Gavin and watch always there. There's so many amazing ones. That's probably the one that I should go back to. That go to.
It's a good one. Adam?
I was going to say John Carpenter.
Oh.
But something more recent, I love Hereditary. And going back to that, it's just so frightening, but in a new way. It was a new, something I felt like I was watching a new way in when I saw that. So it's incredible. But there's so many over the years. I love Halloween. I love The Shining. I love, so many good ones.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time today, guys. Congratulations on Hokum. Let's get a round of applause.